Hello everyone, this is Afrin Rajoy, and in this lecture I'm going to talk about some topics related to diversity and family, such as gender, sexuality, religion and spirituality, and age and body image. Let's start with gender and sexuality. Previously, we talked about gender and sexuality in terms of all the different social location factors that we have, and the important point is, or one important point is that all the social location factors that we talk about, they're not 0 or 1 or binary, they're like on a continuum, right? So that also includes gender and sexuality, and all these different social location factors, including gender and sexuality, they impact the intersectionality, power dynamic, and our lived experiences, right? So it's really important that gender is a spectrum and can encompass a range of identities beyond the binary, right? Including transgender, non-binary, genderqueer, or gender fluid individuals. In family therapy, in our work, understanding and respecting diverse gender identities is really important, and we as therapists should create a brave and inclusive environment where individuals and families can explore and express their gender identity freely, right? We also need to be familiar with the concept and the different stories and narratives behind it, because again, like the stories that we deal with or we hear in therapy room, they're all impacted by various social location factors. So we can help families navigate the challenges that may arise when a family member identifies as a different gender that assigned at birth, right? Than assigned at birth. And, we can offer support, education to facilitate the understanding and acceptance. So sexuality refers to a person's sexual orientations, attractions, desires, and again, it encompasses a range of identities, including, but not limited to heterosexual, same-sex, homosexual, bisexual, asexual orientation. Sexual orientation is kind of like part of a person's identity and should be not kind of, it's a part of person's identity and should be respected and also celebrated. In the context of family therapy, issues related to sexuality can arise when there's a lack of understanding or acceptance within the family unit, right? Or the people that we have in the room. And we as therapists can play an important role in helping families addressing these challenges and fostering open and non-judgmental communication. So we can provide education about sexual orientation, challenge harmful stereotypes, and promote empathy and acceptance within a family. Intersectionality is another concept that we, again, like we talked about it before, there is such a great YouTube videos on YouTube about intersectionality that you can watch. It's really essential to understand that, specifically about gender and sexuality, they, like any other social location factors, they intersect with other aspects of identity such as race, ethnicity, culture, religion, ability, right? So this intersectionality influences an individual's experience and may contribute to unique challenges within a family dynamic. So family therapists, couple and family therapists must consider these intersecting identities and their impact when working with diverse, families, populations, individuals, couples, all the different things. So we really want to promote a kind of like affirmative perspective and therapy, and in this kind of like perspective, we emphasize support, validation, and affirmation of diverse gender identity, sexual orientation, honestly, all the different social location factors that we have, and we really want to reduce discrimination and promote self-acceptance and well-being for our clients. No matter what approach you use, narrative therapy, Bowen, whatever, right? Solution focused therapy, whatever approach that you learn and you will learn in the future. Again, like even if like when that approach or model was developed, maybe it was like 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 25 years ago, right? So just always keep in mind that when that theory or approach was developed, maybe our diversity training was not at a point that is right now. So we don't need to be loyal to a model or approach in terms of like 100% doing what it says, exactly in the same way, because again, like we keep getting updated about our diversity training and inclusion and inclusivity, all those different things, right? So we really want to be loyal to the tenets of an approach or theory, but we always should actually modify the way that we use that theory or approach, because we want again like to keep that affirmative perspective in our work as a therapist. Sometimes people think that spirituality is being religious, but religion is one type of spirituality. So again, like I mentioned this before, but I'm going to repeat it. Spirituality is about meaning-making systems that we have. It's about how we make meaning out of our life story, out of the different stories that are going on in our lives, right? It could be about health, illness, recovery, trauma, healing, right? So like again, like the way that we make meaning out of what's going on in our lives, that's spirituality. That's the meaning making systems that we have. And one meaning making system, one way of actually meaning making systems or having meaning making systems is having a specific religion, right? And there are all these other ways as well, right? So someone may believe in karma. Someone may believe in reading, leaves of tea, right? So whatever like that for one person might be superstition, for the other person could be, their spirituality, the way that they make meaning out of life events. In my personal and professional experience, it's really easy to talk about what I just talked about, to recognize the differences on a paper. It can be more challenging to deal with our biases and to have and not having our biases in a session that we have with our clients. Because at the end of the day, you are sitting on your chair as a therapist and your client is talking about how they are making meaning of a recent loss or trauma or whatever happened in their lives, and they said something like, I believe that this is a God's test or a test of God based on the religion that I have, or I believe this is karma, I did something bad in the past and this is the result of that, or I went to my psychic and they did this whatever kind of like play, or again, like reading leaves of tea or whatever, and then this happened, so this is why this is happening. Like it's easy to sit on your chair and whatever you're showing on your face in your mind, there's this voice that says this is ridiculous, or says this makes a lot of sense, or says this is BS, or whatever. It's really important to be mindful of that voice in your head. It's really important to be mindful of your own biases, because again, like you are not there to teach them anything about their own meaning making systems. If your clients believe that if they carry a melon on their head on a street, and if that belief does not have any harm for themselves or others, who are we to tell them this doesn't make sense, or this is BS, or this is superstition, or this is whatever, or this doesn't work, right? We should not do that, because it's not our lives, right? It's their lives and the way that they make meaning out of it. And it's again, like in practice, that could be really challenging. That is why I always recommend consultation. Even like in the US, when you get your license, practically you don't need to have a supervisor, right? Because you are a licensed therapist. I think in some countries, I think in Europe it's not like that, I'm not sure, but uh, like anyways, I believe that even when you're licensed, you should always do consultations. You should always have a mentor, because you should always, obviously, from my perspective, we should all go to therapy all the time, because therapy is for the strong, because we all have blind spots, right? We all have different sort of, many meaning making systems that may be aligned with our clients' systems, or maybe, in contrast. And some of us believe that, having a contrast or seeing a contrast or conflict is not good in therapy. Some people look at it as an opportunity to learn. Again, like all these different perspectives, right? So it's all about perspective taking. And again, like it's really important for us to have conversations about all these different aspects and to be mindful of them. Having a good therapy session, as I mentioned it before, is not about just having the right theory or approach or tools in your toolbox. It's also, the majority of the work is about who you are, and who you are is about all the biases that you have. Biases, they shape us, and we can never be without biases. We can only become mindful of our biases and, challenge them in different ways. Now let's talk about age and body image again as two important topic and concepts in our work as therapists. So let's talk about some of the concepts. So we have ableism, a term ableism, which refers to discrimination and prejudice and systemic oppression against individuals with disabilities, right? So it involves the belief that disabled people or people with disability are inferior to non-disabled or people without any disability, and exclusion of individuals with disability from full participation in society. Ableism can manifest in various ways, including in accessible environments, negative stereotypes, limited opportunities, right, and unequal treatment in family therapy. And addressing ableism involves challenging biases and promoting inclusivity, acceptance, and support for family members. I want to highlight one point and then give you one example from my professional work. The first one is the language that we are using, and I think I mentioned this before, but I used to say like people who are differently able instead of people with disability, because I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago in my diversity training, that was what I learned. And now, in the past 1 or 2 years, I learned that we should ask people. Some people prefer the concept or the phrase people with disability, and some people prefer people who are differently abled. It was interesting to me because I got this was brought to my attention that some people, when you say like people who are differently abled, they really don't like it because they feel like that does not capture their lived experience, and we should say people with disability to capture that. And for other people, when we say people who are differently abled, that is more empowering to them. So one point, just again, like to not be sure that what you think is correct. You should always check with people. The other thing is, I just wanted to share one example from my own professional experience about ableism, and how all these different things, again, like when we talk about them, they could seem easy, but they are not easy in our work. So I had and still I have, I work with many individuals, couples, and families with chronic illness, cancer, different physical and medical issues. So I had this one client, and she had some sort of physical illness that I don't want to mention, but it was in what they call invisible, right? So when you look at the person, you don't necessarily see, or like there is, something going on, and she herself called herself a person with invisible disability. So anyway, one time she was talking about her relationship and the relationship dating process that she has with someone, and on a conversation, I mentioned to her that at the end of the day, we all need to compromise around all these different things. We are not perfect, and we're not going to find a perfect person, and life is not perfect, so everyone has to compromise. And what do you think about that when you are talking about this relationship and the sexual part of your relationship? And from my perspective, that was a very kind of like neutral conversation, logical, like makes sense, everything. And thank God that I had a good relationship, good rapport with this client, because what happened was that she told me that what you just said, what you just told me to the client was really hurtful, because just because I am a person with invisible disability, that doesn't mean that I have to compromise about one aspect of my relationship, which is very important to me, right? So again, like me looking at a situation, I feel like, okay, there's miscommunication, or you didn't understand what I'm saying, I didn't mean like that, right? But what happened was I actually apologized to the client and I said, I am so, so sorry that I hurt you. Obviously, I can talk about this is not my fault, blah, 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 blah. I didn't mean like that. But at that point, I thought that that's not helpful. What was more helpful is to just pause and understand that what I was mentioning was from a privileged position, because I don't have that disability or invisible disability, and that person has been dealing with it for a long time, and what I just told her did not was not received, sorry, from the perspective or the angle that I had. So you see how complicated it can get, right? And how important it is to be humble, to be curious, to ask questions, to like when you make mistakes, you admit it, you try to make it up, you try to have a brave space with your client, you try to have a good rapport. I think that if this client was, a client, in her, I don't know, first or second session, if we didn't have such, great rapport and a history, professional history with each other, maybe after that session, she would never come back, right? Because I really hurt her. Because of the rapport that we have, fortunately we were able to address it. But again, like that was just one example of how these things could get complicated. Let's go to the next concept or term that we have, which is ageism. And ageism refers to prejudice, stereotyping, and discrimination based on a person's age, right? Whether they are young or old or whatever. So ageism can lead to unfair treatment, marginalization, and limited opportunities for individuals of certain ages. One of the examples that I've seen in therapy rooms many times about ageism is when you have a family and with different members with different ages, there's just this bias most of the time from the therapist that, for example, you are 11 years old, so your idea does not matter, or you don't understand, or you are 67 years old, so you should just deal with the situation. Obviously, therapists, they don't say that, right? But you can see that bias coming in communication, in body language, in the dynamic of the session. So again, like something to be very mindful of. We have also sizeism. Sizeism, also known as weight bias or fat phobia, refers to discrimination or prejudice based on person's body size or weight. Sizeism perpetuates negative stereotypes, body shaming, and mistreatment of individuals who are deemed overweight or underweight. In family therapy, obviously, addressing sizeism involves promoting body positivity, challenging weight-related stereotype, fostering a healthy body image for all family members, and cultivating an environment of acceptance and respect regardless of body size. Again, like one of the things in my own professional work is I try to be what I call realistic. And by saying that, I mean sometimes I see some therapists or just in social media, some posts they talk about, oh, you should never be like impacted by all these different messages in society. And I do believe that we are human beings. We are going to be impacted by the advertisements that we see, with the messages that we see in our society, with the way that people who are quote unquote fit get feedback, or all these different things. So what I tell my clients is that I understand like we can get impacted, and those things, they can influence, they can have influence on us. But what we want to do is we want to modify those stories or influences or impacts, right? So it's okay to get sad, angry, whatever emotion you are feeling with the look that you got from your friend, or a feedback that you got which was not okay, not fair by someone, right? It is okay to get sad, angry, whatever, and that was not fair, that should not happen. At the same time, like these are the things, or when you every day you go in front of the mirror and you have this criticizing voice in your head, I understand why that's happening, because you're a human being and there are all these different messages in the world. What we want to do is we want to challenge that, right? So when you hear that voice, you just want to be able to pause, say, hey, this is not the truth, I'm worthy, beyond all these different things, and kind of like challenging that voice and promoting self-compassion for yourself. I think that is much more helpful than denying every message that we get in our society and just saying, open your eyes, close your eyes, and say, everything is good, because everything is not good, right? We should validate the experience, we should sit with our emotions, and then at the same time fight with unfairness and social injustice issues. The next term that we have is healthism, and healthism refers to the belief that health is solely an individual's responsibility, and that individuals who do not meet certain health standards are morally inferior, right? So it can involve judging and, stigmatizing individuals based on their lifestyle choices, physical appearances, or health conditions. In family therapy, addressing, healthism involves challenging the notion of moral, kind of like that superiority based on health status, right? Promoting holistic well-being beyond physical health and fostering compassion and support for family members regardless of their health condition and choices. This concept reminds me of a conversation that I've had with my, not even clients, friends, many times, that they were talking about their own experiences, and I don't name the store, but maybe you all can guess. Like there's this branch grocery store, which when you go there, you see much more diverse population and specific populations who are buying grocery stores there. And a lot of, or sometimes, it happened and my friends are talking about, oh my God, I don't understand why, this specific population is always going to this specific store and all they buy is like just soda and sugar and, like quote unquote unhealthy products, and they have unhealthy lifestyle, and that is why they are obese, or they are basically judging them, right? And then having this conversation that this is not just about an individual, this is about a system, about socioeconomic status, about affordability. When you make this much money based on all these different discriminations in society, and based on the fact that you couldn't continue your education because of all these different systemic issues, at the end of the day, you make this much money, and with this much money, you cannot go to the Whole Foods. You cannot buy all these organic, healthy products, right? So it's just not one linear way of thinking that this individual is lazy or is not educated or doesn't know about healthy lifestyle or does not want to be healthy, or all the different judgments that society has. It's about having that, again, like systemic perspective, that this individual, when needs to work 15 hours a day, they don't have time to go to the gym or this fancy gym for 2 hours, right? So again, like when you work with clients, when you are, even like when you're working with them about some piece of advice, or you have plans about their lifestyle, or all these different things, keep in mind that when you tell a client, oh, just go and walk in your neighborhood for half an hour each day, it's just so easy, just do it. Maybe that neighborhood is not safe enough for them to walk in it, right? So again, like having that systemic perspective and promoting that when we are working with all these different concepts. So addressing all these different forms of discrimination in family therapy is really important for creating an inclusive and brave space. We try to not use safe space anymore, because when we say safe space, safe for who, right? I think this is a safe space, but only because it's safe for me. I don't know if it's safe for the other person based on their social location factors, their traumas, their stories, whatever. But we want to have a brave space where we can be supportive, inclusive, and we can, if we make mistakes, we can admit it and we can try to make it up, right? So family therapists really can facilitate discussions, challenges, and actually challenge biases and stereotypes, and promote education and awareness, and foster empathy and understanding among family members. And by addressing these issues, we as family therapists can contribute to kind of like reducing oppressive beliefs and promoting equity and respect within the family system when we are working with them. As I mentioned in my introduction video, each class and each topic is really different. Some classes, have more potential for weekly lectures in terms of explaining, complicated concepts, or For example, in theories class, each week you would have a lecture about the specific theory, the different skills, tools, all these different things, the philosophy behind the theory. In diversity class, again, like as I mentioned in my introduction video, it's really important, like it's not hard to understand the definition of gender, sexuality, intersectionality. That is not the hard part. The hard part is like how you digest them, how you integrate them in your daily life, how you can use them as applications for them, how you can use them when you have a case study, when you have clients in front of them. And you may have a long or short way to see clients at this point, but again, we can practice that through conversations, discussions, and also case studies and homeworks and assignments that you have. Because of that, as I mentioned before, in the lectures, I'm not going to repeat what you have in the book because that's just redundant. That's kind of like undergrad level lecture. Instead, what we do is like we try to have implications and time to digest, right? I teach diversity, in in-person settings as well, and that's the same thing. Like we spend half an hour, 1 hour on a case study. You read the case study, you have conversations about it, you analyze it, and then we can talk about it. The same thing can happen here. You have time to review the materials. There's a short lecture, and then after that, you have a case study. As you see here, I want for you to spend some time and think about it, and think about all these different issues that are mentioned here. Think about, if you are familiar with approaches, what kind of approach you may use with this case. And actually, that approach part is not important in this class. It's really important when you have theories class. In this class, I'm more interested in your diversity, inclusion, and intersectionality and systemic perspective. How do you address the power dynamic in this session? How do you see the power dynamic in this session? How would you address, ableism, ageism, sizeism, healthism with this family? What kind of conversations would you have? Which part is uncomfortable for you? Which part is comfortable for you? What kind of biases you have yourself? Any of these issues, any of these stories here, may bring up something in your personal stories, maybe, or professional story. How would you address that? Imagine you have a time with your supervisor. What are some of the questions that you want to ask them, right? All those different things. Please spend some time, write it down, think about it, talk with a friend, classmate. If you have ever any questions, you can always use the discussion boards. You can always email me, email the TA of the class. And in that way you learn better and better. So this is your case study for the systemic kind of like approach that we have in addressing week 5, 6, 7. And I hope that you can think about it at the end of week 5 or 6 or 7, however it's comfortable. I don't want to micromanage learning styles, so whatever fits best with your learning style. If you want to look at it at the end of week 7, that is also okay. But keep thinking about applications. Keep thinking about what part is challenging for you, what part is interesting to you, what part you have questions about, what part seems something that you don't want to work with, why, what part seems something that you really want to work with, why, right? All those different questions and way of thinking, those are the things that make you a good therapist.